We recently took my wife's 2008 Mazdaspeed 3 on a road trip. I did the usual pre-trip checks, including oil and coolant. The coolant was a little low, so I filled it to the max level. After the trip, I noticed a bunch of water spots on the turbo heat shield, and the coolant level was back down to the min level, indicating some kind of coolant leak. The car never overheated or had any other cooling-related issues, but the reservoir was near the bottom of the container one day after topping it off. Something was definitely wrong. I hooked up a pressure tester to the plastic reservoir and started pumping. I quickly had water dribbling from the engine under the car. I traced it down to the piping on the plastic coolant reservoir where the hose is attached to. I was relieved that it wasn't anything serious like a head gasket. And I noticed that there was water leaking out from right there, and you can see there's a crack right there, and that's where the water was coming out. So I have to replace the entire reservoir. The NC Models have a similar problem with the plastic reservoir cracking at the filler neck, and if the engines overheat, that usually means it's time for a 2.5 liter swap. Most people, including myself, end up getting an aluminum reservoir. As far as I know, there are no aluminum tanks for the Mazdaspeed 3, so ordered an OEM replacement off eBay. It was OEM and about half the price compared to the dealerships. Replacement was very simple. First, undo the two small hoses at the front of the reservoir. Next, undo the 10mm attaching the tank to the fender wheel. Then undo the 10mm connecting the power steering reservoir to the coolant tank. There's a clip insert that you need to undo by simply lifting a tank off of it. Finally, use some pliers to loosen the pressure clamp on a large hose at the bottom of the front. There's a huge difference between an 18-year-old plastic tank and a brand new one. Busted nipple and a brand new one. This is 2008, so it's 15 years old, 16 years old, something like that. Alright, it is cool tool time. I picked this pressure clamp tool up many years ago in order to reach radiator hose clamps deep down in engine bays where there was no way you could get and operate a regular pair of pliers. It has been a fantastic tool that I use very often. I will be replacing the press fit clamp with a regular worm gear clamp, a really nice one without the interior bearing, so it's not going to push any rubber out. And the pliers worked fine for getting this here off. It's large enough you can squeeze it, but quite often there's times when you can't get a plier in anywhere. So a cool tool I have, I've used this quite often in the back, is an actual compressor for this. And the way this works is this fits right there, and then you press this and tighten it, and then you can remove it. And this here allows you to get into really tight spaces and slide it in and out without having to worry about the leverage of some pliers and getting the leverage stuck everywhere. And assembly is just the opposite. First we hook this here up. And there's usually some lines right there. There's a little nipple and there's a notch in there, and so you make sure you don't misalign it. And when you're putting this back in, make sure you get this into the metal slot right there. And this is a 10mm, so make sure you don't lose your 10mm. And these hoses also have a certain order. You can tell this one here has a ridge on that side, this one here has it on the top. So there's one hose with a ridge on the side, like that. And this other hose has a notch on the top, which fits into that ridge. And then I'm filling up with distilled water. Should probably put the FL22 or whatever it calls for in there. Then we screwed on the pressure tester. And let's pump this up. hold it up, make sure pressure doesn't go down, and I'll let it sit there for a couple minutes, see how it goes. So a couple minutes later, it's lost like maybe a pound or something like that, which is fine. In a couple minutes, I'm sure it could have to do with the air hoses and other leaks like that, but yeah, previously it would drop almost immediately. It went down really quick with the leak, so I think it's a good tight system.
I'll use the vacuum pump and reservoir that I built in a previous video. See link in the description below.
Alright, so now we're going to burp it. We have this hose here, hooked up there, and apply some vacuum. It's vacuum being pulled. You can see bubbles coming out right there. All bubbles have stopped, and you can see lots of the hoses collapsed here, and some of the other places, radiator hoses are collapsed. I'll tilt this up, and just like bleeding brakes, we're going to open this up, and everything gets sucked back in there. No bubbles this time. They're good. Like that. Tighten the hose up. Check for leaks afterwards and underneath the car, and you're good to go.